Just walk away. Just walk away, and there will be an end to the horror.
Yeah. Come. Yeah. Yeah, come on.
Well, the alpha male perhaps is weaker, but he is in charge. If you look at all the leaders around the world, they're mostly old men, and these old men would never stand a chance if they had to fight. I'm talking about a physical fight with, say, a younger but fitter and stronger male. So there is a different kind of alpha male. So when we're saying that women go for the alpha, what are we talking about here? Are we talking about some big, strong man, powerful with big muscles, or are we talking about the one who is actually intellectually superior?
Well, I think you made a good point, Jay, actually, in regards to what I was trying to say is a difference between what human beings are and what animals are. And though, yes, we do share these concepts.
Because a lot of MGTOWs talk about alphas, they tend, the sort of big, muscular, kind of bully male, the sort of rough and tough. But maybe not even him is a real alpha male, because maybe there has been a real switch in our species where actually the alpha today is represented by someone who is older, who is probably physically weaker, but he has the real power.
Yeah.
Right? Why do you think humans started to wear clothes, for example? And some people would suggest that it's because of the weather, because the climate. We tend to protect ourselves. I'm not entirely convinced.
It's more than that. It's more than that. I mean,
there is more, because clothes actually make us blind to our body. Right? You don't really see it. Yeah. If you see two naked men, one is 30 or 40 years old. He is a big, strong, muscular guy. And you see another man who is an older man, who is 75, 80 years old. You saw them both naked.
Then you're gay.
Okay, right. But apart from that, you would think that the one who is 40 is probably the alpha male. But if you ask them to get, dressed, get dressed, the older one is probably wearing the uniform of a general. Yeah. Maybe he is the leader, right? There is a different type of alpha in our species, which is it's just missing in the animal kingdom. That's why I don't entirely agree with these paragons with the animal kingdom, because the elderly in the elderly are just the weakest. End of story. They're just weak.
Okay, good. Now I agree with that, and I'm gonna throw this in and then give TFM the floor. I wanted to ask, because I absolutely agree with that, and I wanted to ask TFM, what's your perspective if we separate, let's say, the concept of alpha within the human species compared to the bonobo?
Okay, so when I use alpha and beta, I'm talking about sexual dimorphism within a species. You're going to have variation. When you have a sexually dimorphic species where the sexual dimorphism favors the male, the further from a female that male is, the closer to the ideal male in that species, as opposed to, because you're going, even in a sexually dimorphic species, you're going to have males that resemble females. But they're going to have low amounts of sexual dimorphism, and they become the betas in that species. Whereas the alphas, the ones who are highly sexually dimorphic, are the alphas. But it's actually, even though everything you said is true, it's actually the same way in humans. Because men are not just taller and bigger and stronger, they're also smarter than women. So the more sexually dimorphic you are, the more intelligent you are as well. And so I'm
sorry, I don't want to interrupt. I just want to say that kind of alpha is completely missing in the animal kingdom. Completely. Just completely. Because I agree with you. I'm sorry if I'm interrupted, but I completely agree with you.
That's okay.
However, this kind of alpha male is that's why, again, the paragon with the animal kingdom is just to me is nonsensical because this alpha is completely missing. If you look at all leaders, no, feminists keep bitching that all men have the power. No, it's actually a very small minority. But if you look at the men who have the power, it's usually the elderly. Men who are older, who are in their 60s, 70, 80. Those type of males in the animal kingdom would just be done. They would be considered the weakest of the clan or the pack or the tribe or whatever. So there has been a fundamental the fundamental switch from the alpha male that you would find in the animal kingdom, which is, like you said, the strongest, the fittest. But here we are different. There is something fundamentally different.
Strongest. There's this misconception that alpha means you're like a big, strong meathead. Alpha just means you're highly sexually dimorphic from a female, as opposed to not as much sexually dimorphism. When you see an effeminate man who has very feminine features, he's going to be more of a beta.
Is he the guy that's in the friend zone or what?
I don't know. Well, let me use this one example. This is the example I like to use. Steve Jobs is a great example. Now, Steve Jobs didn't have a lot of muscle. He wasn't a bodybuilder, but he was tall. If you look at the shape of his skull, like his cheekbones and everything like that, he had high amounts of sexual dimorphism. If he put on a cocktail dress, he would not look like a woman. That's my point. Sexual dimorphism.
And he also had more money than anybody else in the world.
Yes. He created Apple, was fired from Apple because he was so aggressive, which is an alpha trait. He got fired. His company started going into the shitter, and they got him to come back, and then he turned Apple into the most profitable company in the world. So, and he did. And as soon as he died, now the company's going back into the shitter and being overtaken by Samsung. So that is the power of the alpha.
Probably women. It's probably women in charge too. That's probably why.
No, it's men, but these are all like bureaucrats. Because here's the thing: when you have a large company, you're going to have this bureaucracy, and bureaucracy always slows down innovation. Yeah. But because Steve Jobs had these alpha, take charge, no bullshit, aggressive, and people who worked with him, like these tell-all books, and people hated Steve Jobs because he was so aggressive. But he didn't give a shit, and because he had this forceful personality, which is very indicative of an alpha, he got done, and he made that company succeed. And as soon as he died, now the company's slipping back into a slow-moving bureaucracy. But my point is, Steve Jobs, highly sexually dimorphic, highly alpha, a genius, not especially strong. He wasn't young either, and he died of cancer, and he was still a genius. So you got to separate. Like, there's the PUA definition of alpha male, which is like the dude bro with the pop collar and the backwards hat. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about sexual dimorphism within a species. Right. So those traits that define masculinity.
Okay, but who defines that though? Men or women?
Sexual dimorphism defines it.
Yeah, but in the end, come on. In the end, who is really defining that? Because if men aren't defining it, then women are.
Well, no, you see it manifests itself in sexual dimorphism. The more sexually dimorphic, and you're always going to have variation within a species. You're going to have men who are more sexually dimorphic or less sexually dimorphic.
Right.
Definition that sexual dimorphism that defines a man as sexually dimorphic is the definition of masculinity, and femininity is the opposite. So there is some social reinforcement, but it really is inherently biological. Like if we lived in a species where the female was the sexually dimorphic species, the bigger, stronger, more aggressive, we would define femininity as being big, strong, and aggressive.
Okay, but TFM, I want to interrupt you and say this. Is it possible that despite everything you've just said about sexual dimorphism and the difference between men and women, especially in the human species, is it possible that men, being the stronger and the smarter of that sexually dimorphic species, can actually influence its evolution to surpass all of that?
Well, it's a natural product, yes. In short, yes. So there's two ways you have evolution. One is you just have the fittest people reproducing. Mm-hmm. So in animals with patriarchal society, even in humans, when you have male scarcity, the men who survived the wars, which tended to be the alpha males, they were the ones who had all the kids because they were the only men around. So simply by virtue of that, they were passing on their genes, which by definition were more fit more adapted to that environment, and they were influencing evolution in that way. Now, as humans, because we're brains as well as strength and height are parts of sexual dimorphism, being more masculine also means you're more intelligent, which is why male geniuses, like if you compare male geniuses to female geniuses, it's not even close.
Not even close. Not even fucking close.
Genius is a product of masculinity. So as a product of our masculine genius, we are moving closer to transhumanism, which is the equivalent of a major step in evolution when we become like Ghost in the Shell or something like that, when we transcend our biology.
And it will be men that open that door and take the first steps.
Women follow men. We are the builders of society. Women will adapt to whatever world men create. Now, the reason why we have a gynocentric society is because we don't have male scarcity. The beta males outnumber the alpha males, and as part of their mating strategy, they just start pandering to the pussy.
I think I agree with that, but I think it's more than that. It's got to be more than that, man. It seems so simple to me when you say that.
Well, there is more because obviously women play an important role because they make the selection, right? So it is true that men build the society, but they predominantly build it for women, and I think that they kind of build the society according to women's.
See, that's the point. That's what I think. Okay, TFM. This is what I believe. I think I agree with what you're saying, but I think a lot of what you're saying, I think the point you're missing is that men are the curators of women's privilege to a degree that I think a lot of men don't want to admit. I mean,
well, yeah, like I said, the men who would be considered beta males, and what I'm defining is just low amounts of sexual dimorphism. Mm-hmm. They really don't thrive under any system, but the system that oppresses them and screws them over the least is a pair bonding system. So they want a pair bonding kind of egalitarian, which is why you see a lot of male feminists and even MRAs and anti-feminists espousing egalitarianism.
All right, so let's fuck the pair bonding initiative, all of us as MGTOW. Fuck it, done. That's our evolution, man.
Well, no, but the problem is the people who would be harmed, because not every. And I use this example. This is more of an economical argument. Not everybody thrives in a meritocracy. Like there are people who favor collectivism because they know that they would do better in a collectivist system, maybe because they have a physical or mental disability.
Right.
They don't want to be left to their own devices because they know that they won't succeed. Right. But they can succeed better in a collectivist system, even if everyone else is kind of suffering because they're all getting their resources taken. Yeah. They're individually better off, so they're going to favor a collectivist system. And it's the same thing with pair bonding. When you have men and women, now women do not want a patriarchy. If they had to choose, they would definitely choose pair bonding to tournament because they don't want to be the property of men.
But so they can't choose. But
they can choose when we give them the right to vote. So, but assuming we take away the right to vote somehow, some alternative universe.
Yeah.
So, but 50% of the population, all women, will choose pair bonding to tournament.
Let's do that. I wish we could do that. I wish you could like reset the universe and just.
So most beta males will choose pair bonding to tournament because the beta males don't benefit from a tournament. They don't get to reproduce at all. The alpha males take all the women, and the beta males get driven off or killed, or they might get some table scrap. They might get sloppy seconds or something like that. So they don't want that either. So what you do is you have a kind of a coalition of women and the beta males, like what we would call the male feminists today.
What did George Bush call it? The coalition of the willing?
Yeah, exactly. But it's in their reproductive best interests. Yeah. So it really comes down to an alpha male would do better in a tournament environment, whereas beta males do better in a pair bonding environment, and women would prefer a pair bonding environment because they're treated a lot better. They would much rather have males bringing them gifts and pandering to them than just bending them over the table and raping them.
Well, that's very Saudi. That's very Saudi Arabia like.
Well, but so what you have is when you have a free society where everybody's equal, has an equal voice and equal vote, you're going to have a gynocentric society because the women and the beta males will get together and form a coalition and outnumber the alpha males.
All right, I get that.
When you have kind of an anarchistic society where it's a meritocracy, it's going to be a patriarchy because the alpha males are the ones who like do everything, and they're going to acquire everything, and they're going to control everything.
Okay, so my question to you, both of you, is are we beta or alpha as MGTOW?
Individual. It's an individual. Now there are people who
neither or yeah.
All right, TFM first.
Okay, so it's an individual thing. Now, in our current environment, no man is benefiting from, because we've gone past pair bonding. We're now full-on matriarchy. So to use an animal example, it's not just that the men are bringing gifts to the women. The women are literally, well, not literally, they're figuratively biting the men's heads off and sucking their blood and ripping their dick off and watching them bleed to death. So,
Shit.
which is what happens in matriarchal species. So we're past that point. So even the beta males are like, fuck that shit. I'm going to go MGTOW. But they're the guys who Barbarossa has described as one blowjob away from going to the plantation. If things got just a little bit better, not necessarily back to a patriarchy, but just away from feminism back to a pair bonding, kind of more of an egalitarian society.
You mean Paul Elam?
They would disappear. They would go back to the plantation. They're fine with that. They don't want to go back to a patriarchy. So it's really
shit.
So there's a lot. There's going to be a split in MGTOW if society ever does change between those. But there are betas in MGTOW. There are alphas in MGTOW.
All right. Okay.
Really,
Now,
no man current system.
What? Say it again.
No man benefits from the current system. So MGTOW is a diverse group at the moment. But if the system were ever to if feminism went away from a collapse or whatever, and we went not necessarily to a patriarchal society, but more of a gynocentric traditionalist society, I would say probably 70% of MGTOW would disappear.
You're probably right, man. You're probably right.
Even more. Yeah, even more.
All right. Okay. Okay. Let's move it over to Jay. Jay, are we the alpha or the beta today?
I think it's far more complicated than just alpha and beta.
Let's
I
just
think
throw your opinion in.
But my opinion is that neither. I think that most MGTOWs are neither alphas. No, they just had enough with the whole thing. So most MGTOWs are most probably this is my idea is that a lot of MGTOW are coming from horrific experiences. Most of them are broken men. They had horrible experiences with either their mother or their wife or their all the whole system. I've talked to so many MGTOW, and a lot of them that were either screwed by the system or with the justice system or the education system. A lot of them were completely screwed. So like TFM just said, this system is not beneficial to any kind of man. So we have to step a little, out of the sort of alpha, beta sort of thing. It's not beneficial to any sort of man. It's just such a counterproductive system that we have to, go beyond the alpha beta.
Well, I'd like to add to that, and just my opinion, and I'm a bit of an optimist in this perspective. Is I think that we are, and I said this in a video a long time ago, and somebody criticized me for it, and I heard it, and I said, yeah, okay, whatever, maybe I'm fucking weird, but yeah, I think we are evolving. And I don't mean we're learning to grow legs on land. I mean we're learning to evolve past a very strict concept of sexual dimorphism, relationships between men and women. And men are leading the charge, as they always have. They need to take that responsibility because nobody else will. And they are actually evolving on an emotional and social level.
It's certainly the beginning. It's certainly, MGTOW is certainly the beginning, but I don't know because we have to see.
Yeah,
we have to see what's going to happen because we don't know if MGTOW is going to truly succeed. We don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, you could
that's
say,
my point.
I hope MGTOW will succeed, but we don't really know if MGTOW will succeed or, I don't know, most.
I agree.
Simply, I don't want to go MGTOW.
Yeah.
We'll have to see how Japan reacts to the herbivore men, what kind of steps they take. If they do concede and change their society to bring the herbivore men back, or if they just collapse, or if they just bring the boot down and drag the herbivore men back to the plantation. I think they're like the canary in the coal mine.
That's true, man. I never thought about that, but you're absolutely right. They are a very good canary in the coal mine for the rest of us. Let's see what's happening, because they're like about a decade or two ahead of us.
And what the Japanese government is doing is that it's simply introducing other men from other Asian countries, because they know that a lot of Japanese men, especially young men, are going herbivore.
Well,
And they see the problem. They see the huge problem. So what they do, they just introduce a lot of men from either Vietnam or other Southeast Asian countries.
Well, you want to know a very interesting aspect I just recently learned about that culture is the fact that the Japanese, as far as their index of population growth, is so low that they are all old people. In the next 50 years, everybody's old. Very few young people. Now, one of their solutions to it is this: men creating robots. They're using technology in order to create an industry, which they think will be profitable, to take care of all these old people. All right? And this is happening right now. I mean, the Japanese have the most...
I've seen some documentaries. I've seen it, yeah.
They've had the most advanced robotics in the world. And one of the main purposes that they say is like, everybody's getting old, nobody wants to take care of the old, so we're going to invent the robots to do it for us. And I remember there was one dude, I don't know his name, I watched a couple of documentaries, I don't know the dude's name, but what he said was, he said, I'm 45 years old, I hope that in 10 years, this robot that I've helped try to design over the last 10 years, by the time
take care of me.
By the time I'm 55, he's going to take care, or this robot will take care of me. But again, don't we see men solving their own problems?
Well, that's one solution, but like I said before, you're saying something that is right. You're saying that the Japanese population is certainly decreasing and it's also aging at the same time. But do you also take into account that now they're importing a lot of migrants? Because the same thing happened in many European states. For example, the population in Italy, in Spain were also shrinking until they started to import a lot of migrants.
Well, there's only so many Muslims in the world, man. They can't go everywhere.
Importing from Eastern Europe, from South America, from so many countries, so many different areas. And now the population is once again increasing.
$1 million is importing people from other societies the solution to saving your society, or is it just the slow death of your society as it's slowly assimilated by this outside?
It's a desperate solution. It is a solution, but it's a desperate solution.
Well, and I think TFM's right. I mean, but this is the funny thing about what TFM said about the canary in the coal mine with the Japanese. They're very, what's the word? Xenophobic as a culture.
Yeah.
They're very xenophobic as a culture, and they've been very wary of bringing in other cultures. It's only until very recently that they've started to bring other people in. And even until today, it's nothing compared to the States. It's nothing compared to Western Europe. I mean, look, as long as things keep going as they are now, North America and Eastern Europe, they're all going to be fucking Muslims. Because they're all, that's who's breeding and that's who they're allowing into the country. So
I think
you better learn how to you better learn how to pray, my friends. Anyway, go ahead, TFM.
Well, yeah, I definitely think Europe is going to become Muslim. I think North America is probably going to become Hispanic because they're the ones breeding. Now, and the Hispanics, like, they're predominantly Catholic, but I think they're more just like socialist. But I think when that society fails, I think, because there is a growing Muslim population in the United States as well, I think that there'll be a void, and then eventually the Muslims will take over. I think that's, and it really, and I have a theory. I haven't made a video about this yet. I have a theory that the more matriarchal or the more egalitarian a society becomes, the lower the birth rate, and the more patriarchal, the higher the birth rate.
Yes, I agree. I agree.
Just a virtue of logistics. the patriarchal societies will eventually overthrow the egalitarian and matriarchal societies. So it's really just a matter, like, you are committing cultural and societal suicide as you move towards egalitarianism and feminism.
Well,
because you're destroying your population. Meanwhile, the patriarchal societies are having kids like mad.
And why? Think
overtake
you. Think about
the
why.
women don't know what else to do because their function is to have babies. So the man's like, have my babies, and that's your job.
And not only that, but consider this, man, and you have to consider this. Patriarchal societies generally have a lower standard of living in the modern world. They do. They have a lower standard of living.
But that's in the egg thing, because it is that higher standard of living that brings about egalitarianism
and a lower population. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so again, we're victims of our own success. As the West became more successful, as it became more technological, feminism came about and our population started to shrink. Whereas in these third world countries that have very low standards, very harsh standards of living, they're having kids mad and is exporting them throughout the world. Yeah. And they're breeding and they're doing their thing. And it's almost like nature balancing itself out. A society, and I made this anecdote. So a society grows, becomes prosperous, conquers its enemies, eliminates its threats, and as soon as it reaches the apex of its power, the women rise up and burn it down.
Absolutely. And this is happening right now in the West. And I'm in the East watching it and laughing, going, ha ha ha, look at you motherfuckers. And I see these people being critical about, I see critical about races and Islam and religion and whatever. I'm like, fuck you guys. You're getting taken over. Bend over. Take it up the ass.
Yeah, but the fact that women say that they want an egalitarian society, that doesn't mean that they really mean it. That's what I.
Of course they don't
saying.
mean
I don't
it.
think that they don't mean it. That's why they say it, but their goal is not real full gender equality. So it's quite possible that this society, the society that we have now, maybe it is going to collapse, but it's possible that it is because women don't really like it this way. They say that they want it this way, but maybe they don't really want it this way.
Well, the egalitarianism allows that coalition of the manginas and the feminists to get together and form a majority. Because if the women were overt and they're like, hey, we want to be in charge, we want to dominate you, we want to fuck you in the ass and show you what it's like, the men would be like, no, I don't like, because that's why, you have a lot of guys like that inmates now walking away. So the coalition would fracture and fall apart. So they have to claim egalitarianism in order to get rid of patriarchy. But as soon as patriarchy is gone, and you can see this, so this egalitarian coalition overthrows patriarchy. But then as soon as patriarchy's gone and the alpha males have been like driven away, exiled, or killed, or thrown in jail, then you have the coalition breaking apart, and then you have the feminists asserting themselves and saying, okay, now that we have egalitarianism,
and then it's the burning of Rome. It's the end of all.
There is a sort of a feminist paradox. There is some sort of a paradox here, because I don't entirely agree that they don't want male authority. Sometimes they do. When it's about danger and risks and taking responsibility, I think they still expect men.
Well, they want men as slaves, and I think that's what TFM is saying. They want men as slaves.
Matriarchal, it's all, but it really comes down to kind of the instincts. If you look at matriarchal societies, where the woman is the bigger one or the one that's in control of society, they still throw others at problems. Like you look at the queen. The queen bee never fights her own battles.
No,
she's the hive after the battles. And women are the same way. They don't want to fight their own battles. They want to send the men, the other women,
the rest of us.
Yeah, they're no different. Really, the only difference between men and women is sexual dimorphism. And so, but women, they're trying to overcome their biology through government, whereas men, we're trying to overcome our biology through technology.
Well, okay, here's a good question then for you, TFM, and you, Jay. I have a question for you guys. If that's true, if women are trying to overcome their biology through, what was it again? TFM?
Well, the government, the state. Yeah.
The government, and men are trying to do it through technology. The question is this: if women are constantly trying to overcome, I'm going to say, their weaknesses through government, where does that put government, and where does that put us? I mean, what position are we in regards to the government? Don't we have a say in that? As
Well,
men?
but women majority. When you give women the right to vote, you officially pass the point of no return. Because in almost every society, women are about 50% of the population or more.
Mm.
So as soon as you give them the right to vote, you give them the majority of the vote. And now they dictate the direction of government. And that's why, I mean, in the U.S., I don't know how Indonesia politics works, but in the U.S., you have Democrats and Republicans.
It's a fake democracy. It's a fake democracy.
Both parties in the United States pander to women. Neither party will oppose women. They both pander to different groups of women. Obviously, the Democrats pander to the feminists, and the Republicans pander to traditionalists. But they both pander to women. They call them soccer moms and whatever like that. So it's both parties trying to outdo each other to who benefits women more.
You know what's funny? It's funny you say that, TFM, because I've been here since the very first Democratic election, which was about 12 years ago. And, of course, the winner was a nephew of the dictator that came before him. But the point was this, and this was a very interesting observation that I've seen over the last 12 years, is that in this sort of pseudo-democracy, which is no different than the States, in the beginning, every motherfucker voted. Everyone. I mean, 12 years ago, when they opened the first democratic elections, every single man, woman, and child that was eligible fucking stood in line and voted. Why do you think that is?
Well, because they wanted a voice.
Yes.
I mean, everybody wants a voice, but there's the practicalities of the government, and it all comes down to demographics.
Yeah. And how long? Now, this was 12 years ago. Do you think that same enthusiasm exists today? Let's say within the last election?
And when you see the same thing in the United States, we have something called the Electoral College, where if a candidate wins a state, they get all the electoral votes from that state, and electoral votes decide who becomes president. So if you live if you're a Republican living in a predominantly Democrat state, and that state's going to go Democrat, all the Republican votes don't matter because the Democrat gets all of the electoral votes for that state.
Jesus.
So only about 5 states that actually elect the president, because most states are actually locks. They're you have the flyover states where there's a lot of agriculture. They're locks for the Republicans, and the states with the cities are locks for the Democrats. So there's 5 states called swing states that have more or less an equal distribution of Democrats and Republicans, and those states elect the president. Because if you live in a lock state that's already a lock for one party or another, your vote doesn't matter.
Well, you guys are lucky. You guys are lucky. They don't even have that here. They have 300 million villagers lining up at a booth to vote for the guy that looks the best on television. I don't know. Does that sound any different? Because they don't have these swing states. They don't have what you have there.
Provinces are in Indonesia.
Yeah.
Do you have separate provinces, or is it all one big homogenous country?
They pretend to be. They try to be. That's the whole point. They want to be.
No. The United States is fucking huge compared to most countries. It's the 3rd largest country.
Well, are you talking area or population? Because Indonesia has the exact same population.
Quite big.
Indonesia has the exact same population as the United States, but about a third of the area. And
well, yeah, you have the United States has a large population, but also it's really big. The other states have, India has more people than the United States, but it's really small compared to the United States. So when you have a large group, you have to break it up, and that's why we have states.
Well, they could break it up here. They could very easily, actually. I mean, imagine if every state was an island, right? How easy would that be to break it up?
But then you'd have, it's kind of a pain in the ass, because if you have state governments, you'd have to have different authorities and different buildings and
not only that, just about every island speaks its own language, right? but they're
Well,
trying
it's a bit like in India because India has a lot of states. Same
exactly,
thing.
man.
And each state in India they have their own culture and language. You know, if you go from one, that's why they have to speak English. If they don't speak English, they don't understand one another.
Yeah, you don't know what
If you
they
go to
don't. They
another
have no
Indian
fucking clue.
state, you don't understand anything because it's a completely different culture.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. And they have the same population as the United States here. I think it's 350 to 380 million people in an area that is very small.
Was there a point to all this? Because I think we're just going down a rabbit hole now.
I think the point is American democracy. How much power does it really have?
Well, we were talking about how women use the government to try to overcome their biology, and then we got into the female vote, and then now we're talking about
we went to a huge tangent. Yeah.
like getting way off topic.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to the fact of the women's influence in the vote.
Well, if government is created by men, it's enforced by men. It's basically proxy violence against men by men, because women don't do anything. Like, and I know this isn't a blanket statement. I'm sure some women do things, and there's really accomplished women out there. But as a group, women rely on men to do the things. And government is an institution created by men that women can use to oppress other men. So it allows them to just get what they want from men by using a third party. And you see this even on an individual level, where women use the threat of false rape or something like that to get what they want from a man by using the threat of other men. Because if they...
Did you say that women used to oppress men? I didn't hear that. Did you say that women used to oppress men?
No, women use proxy violence. Because women can't oppress men on their own. They're not strong enough. I mean, they're physically weaker than men. If a woman came up to a man, shook her fist at him, and tried to threaten him, he would just laugh.
I love the proxy violence. I love it.
You see, it's like these women who are hitting men in public, and then the man defends himself, and all the white knights spring into action and beat him up. That's the proxy violence. And then when a woman threatens a false rape allegation against a man,
society backs her up.
It's men. It's male police officers that come and arrest him. So women rely on men to oppress men, and that's what government is. It's the mechanism whereby, and women didn't invent government. Men created government for their own purpose. Women have just kind of subverted it by giving themselves the vote that allows them to use the government to oppress men through the power of other men.
So basically, it's a bunch of men who are fucking around other men.
I don't see it that way, because I see it more that it's more men who keep oppressing other men in order to get women's attention and approval. You know, I see it in a similar way, but not entirely, because you're saying using proxy violence, right? But it wouldn't it be fair to suggest that it's actually men who kind of betray other men in order to get women's attention and approval?
So it's a mutually the government and the women benefit at the expense of the men they're exploiting. So again, it's that coalition I was talking about earlier, about the coalition, the egalitarian coalition. So you have the women who want the power, and you have kind of like the beta males who want egalitarianism, and they form that coalition. And the government is that coalition.
Well,
you have women.
If that's true, TFM, if that's true, is it fair to say that in order to perpetuate the evolution of the average man, we should assassinate all men in government positions?
No.
Not really. Because, you get rid of them, there will be more. There will be other.
There'd be other motherfuckers, yeah.
The thing is, and also alpha males, if you just look at biology, alpha males create beta males. Because when a man, let's say a man in an ancient culture returns from war, he's like alpha as hell, doesn't give a shit. He's going to take the most beautiful woman he can find to be his wife and bear his children. Well, what defines feminine beauty is femininity, not masculinity. So his children are by definition going to be less masculine than himself, because they're going to have the most feminine woman he can find to be their mother. And then over the generations, these men become more feminized, because this is also, you see this in royalty and aristocracy. The first king is usually a war hero. He conquered the land and brought everyone to heel, and now he's the king. and he marries this beautiful woman, and he has all these effeminate children. But then they become the king, and then they marry beautiful women, and they have even more effeminate children. And then pretty soon the entire aristocracy is a bunch of inbred, effeminate beta males. But even though if you go back through their lineage, they started out as this ultra alpha guy, but because of the way human sexuality works, alpha men are attracted to feminine women, and then it slowly dilutes the sexual dimorphism as the women have more influence over the biology of their children.
That's the fall of every empire, I think you just described.
Nature always cleanses itself. It's just like the waves and the beach and the tides. So you have the government was created. I mean, you got guys in the Revolutionary War in America who fought a war to create their government. They weren't betas at all.
Name them. Name the guys.
Well, like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and all them. Like the people who signed the Declaration.
Who else? Who else was in there? I don't know the names.
I don't know all their names.
I want to know that history, man, because I'm Canadian. I don't know
the details. So I do. You know, you had the Revolutionary War, and then
John Adams. John Adams,
the guy who made the beer.
Yeah.
But he didn't really.
Else? It was Jefferson was the big one, I think.
Jefferson was one of the major authors, and then there was.
Who else was in there? I mean, because these were men, these were alpha men, man.
Yeah, well, you can't lead a war and not be alpha. Like what Jay was talking about with the old generals. Yeah, they're old, they're weak, but they're still alpha because they're the leaders. That's what defines an alpha.
Yeah.
You don't rise now, but you look at the modern military, it's beta as fuck because, especially since Obama, he actually purged the military of the generals that opposed him. Like when Obama wanted to basically put more women in combat and get rid of don't ask, don't tell, a lot of generals pushed back. I'm like, whoa. You're inserting a lot of like social justice bullshit, and it's going to destroy morale. It's going to lose. And then you're like, you're fired. And he got rid of all these generals that had been there for like decades, and now they're gone.
Christ,
and then he promotes the people who agree with him. Now, and the thing is, this is how societies commit suicide. So that's fine. It's fine if you want to purge your society of masculinity. That's cool. But then when a masculine,
if you have the power to do it,
yeah. But the thing is it's with the presumption that all the threats been neutralized, and now we can safely purge our society of masculinity. That's what happened after the Cold War. Once the Soviet Union fell, the third wave feminism arrived to purge society of masculinity, and that's fine until you realize the threats haven't been neutralized. Just like that baboon. So that they have no alpha males, and they're living their little egalitarian utopia, and then another baboon troop full of alpha males will find them. And that will be the end of their society. So right now you have the West is so arrogant that they think that, like, this is just the way it's going to be forever. We can safely purge all of our warriors from our society. We can get rid of masculinity. We can fill our military full of, people.
Oh, God.
Yeah,
rude awakening, man. They're going to have a rude fucking awakening.
Now, right now they're worried about, like, ISIS, Al-Qaeda. These are really...
Nothing.
They're nothing. They're
nothing.
Poor goat farmers in the Middle East who just have aspirations of jihad. They don't fucking know what the fuck is going on. But if the United States ever goes to war with China or Russia...
I hope you got a place to hide, man, over there.
Yeah, there was really and Russia and China will team up. So it's not just going to war with Russia or China. It's going to war with Russia and China. And there's actually a paper, I haven't read it, but I saw the headline for it, where these experts are saying that if America went to war with Russia and China, they would lose.
Of course they would. Wait a second. Nobody in the world likes you. Nobody. No one. Every country in the world hates you. That's it. Every single country. Even the smallest African nation hates you.
But do you know why? One of the big reasons why they hate us is because we export feminism.
Yeah, of course they do. Of course.
We come to these African villages, like, we want to give you food. And the guys are like, oh, awesome, we're starving to death. We'd love food. And like, whoa. We're going to give your women food because we want to empower women.
And when your women die, we'll tell everybody. But when you die, well, good. We don't give a fuck.
you. Oh, and if you want this foreign aid so you don't starve to death, you're going to have to let women vote. Like, we actually forced Japan to give women the right to vote.
Yep.
During our occupation after World War II.
Well, that's
The
what's
Japanese-
happening here, man. It's exactly happening here.
Like, when people talk about American imperialism, and they're talking about that cultural imperialism where we're pushing our culture, that is feminism. We're exporting feminism. And patriarchal societies don't like that.
No.
And
They
they
hate
shouldn't
it.
like that. And it's not
No, it's a way to say that people around the world hate America because they see America as a very misandric society, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, even here, I mean, trust me, I as a teacher, I watched the UN come into our international school, kick us teachers out, and say, we're going to teach your children about sexual education, and you're not allowed to come in the classroom. You're locked out of the room.
Well,
And I was like, well, what are you teaching my kids, man? Like, what the
that
fuck?
happened. When I was in high school, they did that. The teacher got kicked out, and it was someone from the government that came in
Yeah.
to talk with them. And basically, the one thing I remember from that was the lady told us that she basically explained how men can rape, but not women.
Yes.
If both parties are drunk, the man is guilty of rape, but not the woman. And this was like 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's middle school kids, man. Middle school
What?
kids.
This was like at the dawn of third wave feminism. This wasn't like 2010.
Yeah.
So this has been around, and they've been indoctrinating kids. They've been pushing themselves. And the thing is that's what people resent.
Yeah.
That's what makes people hate
Oh,
America.
God, they hate. That's exactly why. And that's why I hate them, man.
If America was just like, yay, freedom, like, who doesn't like freedom?
Mm-hmm.
But what they're pushing isn't freedom. They're pushing egalitarianism, and they're pushing feminism,
Yeah.
which is undermining because men are the foundation of society.
Yeah.
And when you put egalitarianism and feminism, you're undermining that society. And then what these men do, these men who are doing all the shit, they're doing all the things, and they see their women eating up this feminist bullshit.
You should
And now
see. You should see the women that they hire to do these classes. They
you
wear,
know exactly what they're doing.
yeah, they wear the jilbabs, you know, the hijabs, and they're just getting paid money. They're just repeating bullshit from the.
My theory is that the reason why they're doing this, one is they actually believe they're making a better world because they think an egalitarian world is going to be great. They don't realize it's economic suicide because you're undermining men.
Yeah.
But they're delusional for one. But the other thing is if they make the world egalitarian and feminist, then there really won't be any threats because everyone will be. But the danger of a matriarchal society is a patriarchal society will come around and dominate you and conquer you.
That's the
Because
cycle. That's the cycle, man.
Get rid of your alpha males, and then this new tribe of alpha males will come along and kill you and take your women. So in order to eliminate that, you need to spread egalitarianism and feminism everywhere, so that all the alpha males everywhere in the world are removed.
Wow.
And then now there's no chance of having a separate culture of alpha males come in and conquer your culture. So there's like the short view is they really think they're making the world, and they actually truly believe
They do
that
believe it. They do believe it, man.
that would be
that's
in a
why it's like
utopia.
a religion. That's why it's
We
like a
would-
religion.
It is a religion. The egalitarianism, and this is why whenever I hear anti-feminists or MRAs spouting egalitarianism, it makes my heart sink because
Yeah.
that they're trying to. It's a half measure because the feminists want feminism and they think egalitarianism because in the middle is the ideal, but that's a fallacy. But yeah, they think they're making heaven on earth if they just create egalitarianism and get rid of the alphas and make the world pro-woman, that it's all going to be sunshine and lollipops. They realize, like, no, you're going to have a crumbling wasteland because you've got rid of all your did everything.
Yeah.
That's why I made that video, the I Pray Equality. When I compared, people who actually uploaded videos on YouTube, they say, I believe in equality, as if you were hearing, religious people saying, I believe in Jesus. Because to them, equality is like Jesus, Jesus coming to earth and making miracles and, creating a better society. But that's
It's scary.
It is, but it's scary, how the human mind functions, it needs something to believe. and it needs so badly something to believe that they're even ready to screw up everything, to destroy the whole thing.
It's frightening.
In the name of their bullshit. It's just egalitarianism. It's like a beautiful. I call it like the beautiful lie. It's just like a religion.
Yeah.
So even if they succeed, and they succeed in turning all societies around the world into this sort of egalitarian bullshit, however,
well, it has to be
still
benefiting someone. Who's it benefiting?
However, but of course, but it won't. The real question is it going to benefit everybody? Of course not. And a lot of men will be very disappointed, right? Because America is very now feminized, and the feminism is very strong, and equality and all that bullshit. And yet America is the biggest country for MGTOW, right? Most of MGTOWs come from America. Yeah. Because a lot of people, a lot of men are going to be very disappointed. They're going to say, hey, this shit is not convenient
at all. It doesn't work for me, man. Like, where's my piece of the fucking pie?
If you look at communism, the whole basis of communism, the bedrock of communism was egalitarianism, making everything equal and fair. And what happens is when you try to implement it, you have to start building gulags and mass graves and kill a whole bunch of people because it doesn't work. And the only way it can work is through oppression and fear, because people aren't equal. You have to tear people down. You can't make people equal who are fundamentally biologically unequal. You have to tear people down to the lowest common denominator. That's the only way to make people equal at the end of the day. And I use the example of the fair paycheck fairness thing, the thing in the 60s where you had to pay women the same as men for the same work. Yeah. That law's been on the book for 45 years, and there's still a pay gap because men are better work.
Yeah, and they're still bitching about it.
Well, now they realize if you just have a clean slate and let women and men compete against each other in a fair market without any discrimination, men still win because we're biologically superior. Yeah. So the only way to make equality is to tear men down to the level of women, but that undermines society. And just like with communism, the idea was to make everybody equal. We're all going to be equal. Well, human beings are not equal. Men and women aren't equal. Nobody is equal to anyone else. We're all different. So the only way to make people equal is to tear people down. So then what you have is you have to have guys with machine guns building walls to make sure you can't escape, and then shooting people who disagree with them and kidnapping them and throwing them in gulags, and that's equality. And, of course, it all comes crumbling down, just like the Soviet Union did.
Is that still? Do you think that's happening today in any country in the world?
Korea, it's happening right now in North Korea. They're like the last bastion of true communism. But the thing is you look at the goal, this is like my practical argument in my case for patriarchy. You have to look at what works. What creates a successful society? Egalitarianism doesn't work. It sounds good. It feels good. It doesn't work. Feminism burns societies down.
So why don't these people understand that if we have examples through history?
Because it's like a religion. You can give religious people all the evidence. They don't give a fuck about the evidence. If you talk with creationists and they're 100% convinced of creationism, you can give them all the scientific evidence. They won't give a fuck about the evidence that you're giving them because it's their delusion. And there is no way that you can communicate with people who are actually living a real delusion, like a beautiful. To them, it's just like I said before. It's like a beautiful lie.
And
they're not going to give up.
And isn't it fascinating that the majority of people that believe in this beautiful lie have a vagina?
There are also a lot of men. We have to be fair because
let's say the majority.
A lot of vaginas, a lot of whiteness, a lot of simps, a lot of men who.
I agree, but let's say the majority. Because let's say the majority runs just like TFM said, they control the voting population.
But like TFM said, a meritocratic system would never be convenient to women. That's why they want to believe this. They want to believe this because a meritocracy would never favor women. Never. There is no way that if they truly compete in a fair way with men, they would never win. It's impossible.
Okay, so I want to ask TFM this. TFM, why do you think, and if I'm wrong, tell me, why do you think that this is so popular to women? I mean, does it come down to our biology? Like,
women, they in their heart of hearts, they know that they're inferior to men, but that upsets them. They don't want to accept that. They don't want to accept that men are biologically superior to them, and that they will always naturally assume a second-class status. They want to fight that. They want to believe that they can transcend that limitation. They can engineer a society where women and men are equal. Now, I think maybe originally, I'll give women the benefit of the doubt. I think maybe at first women thought they actually could create a truly equal society. They didn't start with the intention of oppressing men, just like I don't think communists started with the intention of building gulags and murdering millions of people. I think they had the intention of creating an actual equal society. But we are a sexually dimorphic species, thus we are not equal. So it's really just a matter of accepting biology or not accepting biology. And
Well, okay, but why do women have such a hard time accepting that? I mean,
it's painful. I mean, imagine if you, let's turn this around. Let's say you were born with a physical handicap, like you were born with no legs, like you had little stumps in your legs. So you were born with little stumps, and you're told, okay, you have little stumps. You're never going to have a job. You're never going to get married. You're just going to be this weird circus freak that everyone's going to make fun of, and that's your life. You would do everything you could to try to overcome that. You would build robot legs. You would, like the guy on the surfboard that with no legs or arms or who gives speeches.
Yeah.
You would try to make the most of your situation. And in a perfect world, you would try to overcome your situation. You would try to overcome your disability. Like the superhero Daredevil who's blind.
Yeah, he's beautiful. Beautiful character. Love that character.
He compensates for his blindness by having really good hearing and stuff like that, and he's like a superhero.
Yeah.
So women have these and they're not nothing wrong with them. They're just different. Like testosterone is the hormone of the gods, as Truth Over Everything used to say. And it's a performance enhancing drug.
Yes,
like it's illegal
to
inject
yeah.
to an unfair advantage. We produce it naturally with our bodies. Like we're producing performance enhancing drugs with our bodies. So
and it turns women into men.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. Like it's nature, and my point is, it's not fair at all. But it's nature, and nature doesn't give a shit. So,
do you think it really comes down to just women being afraid of life being fair? I mean, what?
Well, yeah, because why would they be so obsessed with fairness and justice and equality? That's projection. They're projecting the exact opposite.
Yeah, because let's be honest, guys. Let's be honest with one another here. When it comes to feminism, if we take the majority of loud voices that are spewing this bullshit, it is women. There are some men that kind of coddle along and pretend to get pick up the scraps, but let's be honest, it is women that seem to be taking advantage of this freedom they have. Why?
Well, a lot of feminism is basically penis envy. That's really what it comes down to. They resent the advantages men have, and they don't accept that they're biological. They have to. They must be some kind of social privilege. They must be social constructs. They can't possibly be endemic to our biology, because if it's endemic to our biology, you can't do anything about it. That's
the obsession with male privilege, right?
Yeah. Everything has to. That's why gender is a social construct. It's clearly not. Holy shit.
That's why you can be racist as long as the focus of your racism is a white man, right?
Well, the thing about the racial differences are really small. If you look at the differences, and I made this point with my thing about feminist racist deflection. If you look at STEM majors between blacks and whites, the difference between STEM enrollment and STEM graduation is only 1% and 2% between blacks and whites. Now that's very significant, because there's an argument, blacks are only getting into college because of affirmative action. Well, they're also graduating at the same rate as whites. So yeah, you can get people into college through affirmative action, but you can't make them graduate.
Yeah.
So if they're graduating in STEM at the same rate of whites within 2%, that's equality. But if you look at the difference between men and women, there's a 13% difference.
Wow.
We have a 2% difference between the races. We have a 13% difference between the sexes. That is biology. That, like, the difference between the races.
Why do they never talk about that shit? They never talk about that shit.
Of course they don't.
They use racism as a cover. I was actually accused of racism with my my case for patriarchy. I didn't even mention race, but this feminist was saying that patriarchy is the source of racial slavery, and thus by supporting patriarchy, I'm supporting slavery. It's like, you fucking cunt. The suffragettes were huge racists. Women stole affirmative action from black people 2 years after it was passed in 1965.
Wow.
And almost all feminists are white privileged women. So fuck you trying to throw black people under the bus as cover for your bullshit. Anyway, but the thing is the differences between the races aren't really that significant. It's like melanin, nose, thing. Like, there are some IQ differences depending on where they go, but they're usually offset. Like, I use this like circular chart, whereas like black people tend to be bigger and stronger than white people, who tend to be bigger and stronger than Asians, who tend to be smarter than white people, who tend to be smarter than black people. So it all works in like this feedback loop. So it all depends on who's more adapted to their environment. If you have Africa where it's very harsh, not a lot of industry going on, it's better to be bigger and stronger than to be more intelligent. So you're going to have evolution where females are going to select for bigger and stronger mates rather than bookworms. Yeah. And then in Asia, it's going to be different. But you can rectify all those differences if you got all the races together and we had a big fucking orgy. Like, we turn the lights off, everybody's fucking everyone, and we don't even know who the dads are. And then, like, we just did that for a couple generations, and all the kids would come out kind of the same kind of shade of brown, and all the races intermixed. If you did that, you would eliminate all the differences between the races. But the differences in sex would still be there. Yeah. Because that is biology. You can't change that at all.
If this is true, and I believe it, I mean, seriously, come on, guys. In all of our history as a human species, what continues to motivate women until this day to propagate this sort of, I don't know, sexism? I mean, what is it?
It's convenient to them. It's obviously convenient. If they wouldn't do it if there was no convenience, so there must be something convenient.
So what is the convenience? What is it?
Well, they can actually exploit men. Feminism and egalitarianism is just a form of gender parasitism. I would say it that way. I would explain it in a form of parasitism between the two genders. Women know that they cannot actually build a society with their own hands. They know that only men build, organize, and run societies. So they're saying, hey, let's try to, take an advantage, right? Then you can see the parasitism.
Okay, if that's true, and if TFM, if you agree with what he just said, then what we're basically saying here is that all women are like that. Is that possible?
That's the general common rule. Of course, there are always exceptional circumstances, but I would say that's the general rule. Yeah,
well, we'd have to say they're all like that.
Because on average, of course, we're talking about averages, but on average, of course, men on average are stronger, more powerful, they're faster, they're taller, right, and they're brainier, right? So the only thing that women can do, the moment they realize that on average men are faster, taller, stronger, and more powerful and brainier, the only thing they can do is to try to turn that to their advantage, right? Try to do something so that men will actually perform in women's favor.
Okay,
and
what do you see?
That's where all the blaming and the shaming. When you shame someone, you mortify them, you make them feel guilty, and if they feel guilty, they're ready to say, oh, I'm sorry, let me do something for you because I did something wrong. This is what they're doing. They're constantly, all of this stuff is just bullshit. It's nothing of that is real. All the mansplaining crap and all the manspreading shit, all of that is just garbage. Rape culture is bullshit. But they keep doing that every day. They come out with some more shit. Every day they invent something that is coming out of their asshole, something completely made up. They do it to mortify men, and they do it all the time. So the men, as a collective, as a group, they will feel, they will feel guilty,
defeated,
and they will feel sorry. They will feel that they have to do. It's a sort of a global shit testing. Let's put it that way, right? It's like they're trying to squeeze the lemon more and more and more. And I once said that women's perpetual, never-ending bitching and complaining, well, because that's what they do. This is feminism. Feminism is complaining. They complain all the fucking time. That's one of the most powerful engines of our species. That's exactly what is.
And I would dare to say that when you say feminists, I mean, let's not forget there are male feminists, but I would dare say that the most vocal complainers within the movement and religious of feminism are women.
Are women, but of course, because they're the ones trying to extract more resources.
Yeah,
that's what they're doing. If you think about the evolution of our species, just think of primitive times, primitive men and primitive women. Can you imagine if men were performing in a certain way and women said, okay, you're doing fine? Why would men ever even try to perform better? You can't tell men, if you're a woman, you can't tell men, okay, you're doing fine. Because if you're telling your men, you're doing fine, why would they even try to perform better? So what women are doing is, okay, you're almost there, but you could do better.
You can do better.
Right? So you try to do better. Do you think that they're going to say, okay, you're doing fine? No, they're going to keep saying that. They're going to keep saying, no, you can actually do better. You will never have a time where women will actually say, okay, now you're doing fine. They will never stop complaining. Because the moment they stop to complain, men stop to perform better and give better.
Yeah. So, TFM, what do you think? Women are like this?
Well, yeah, no, it's female nature, and it really comes down to the fact that women require men. They can't make it on their own. Now, there's this feminist fantasy where, yeah, men are bigger and stronger, but women are smarter. Well, no, it's not. Like, the data proves that. Men are not only bigger and stronger, they're also smarter, so fuck you. But women really hate that. And because they realize they need men, if they were, and there was like this thing, I can't remember who uploaded the video, on Survivor, that game show, where they had like male island and female island, and like the men built like this beautiful treehouse and this table, and they made beds, and they were like chilling, and the women were just sunbathing.
Oh yeah, had, like, I know that. Yeah,
made out of a blanket and a string, and the women were just miserable because they had no men to do all the stuff, and they eventually like took some of the women and some of the men and mixed them around. And then when the men got to female island, the women just made them do all the work while they sunbathed. And the men were like, well, this is fucking bullshit. But, that's how it works.
But they still agreed to like allow them to...
And that is the amazing thing. That's the real question, That's the amazing thing. No matter how shitty women treat men, men keep doing that. That's the amazing part.
In the game show, they obviously forced it. They said, okay, we need 3 people to go to Girl Island. We're going to bring 3 girls to Male Island. So that's like government kind of enforcing egalitarianism.
Right.
But if these were 2 primitive societies, like in
those
actuality,
women would be dead.
They would be dead, or they would be raped. Like the men would go to Female Island, and they would bonk them on the head with a club, and they would drag them to Male Island and bend them over the pinball machine.
Yeah, and rape the fuck out of them.
Yeah, and they'd be like, and then with the woman, like you're talking about women complaining, the women wouldn't be complaining because their mouth would be full.
Yeah, of course they wouldn't. They wouldn't be complaining at all because eventually they'd be giving birth to one of those guys' kids.
They'd be getting their orifices filled too much to be complaining, and then and if they mouth off too much, they just get the shit beat out of them. Yeah. So that's the brutal part of patriarchy. But eventually, as the population grows, because eventually, a man who kidnaps a woman to be his sex slave or whatever, he doesn't give a shit about her. But kids care about their mothers. Yeah. So what happens is, as the generations roll on, women, the attitude towards women is softened. And
I'd like to have a sex slave.
Who wouldn't, really? And then what we're talking about with sex robots.
Yeah.
We need a robot.
We want something we can just rape and not feel guilty about, and not have to worry about the authorities coming and arresting us.
Yeah, why not? Why not?
And if that technology never comes, if we have a collapse, like a worldwide collapse, or at least in the West, where we return to patriarchy and sex bots aren't a thing, there's just going to be women whoring themselves out.
Oh, of course they will. Rape, forget about it. It doesn't exist anymore.
That's why whores have pimps, because otherwise the men just beat them up and don't pay them.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a bad time. And the women did it to themselves, so I don't even feel guilty for them. But you're talking at the end of the day, society, it comes in waves. We start out with patriarchy, where women just shut the fuck up and suck my dick, and then as generations continue on, we soften our attitude towards women, because these aren't just women we're just kidnapping to rape. These are our sisters, our mothers, our cousins. These are our family. We don't want to rape our family.
Yeah.
So we soften our attitude towards women, and we kind of move towards egalitarianism, where we think we're going to have this utopian society, but we actually just have gynocentrism. And then from gynocentrism, women, the second they don't need men to survive, whether it's a slave class, whether it's the Industrial Revolution, the second they don't need men to survive, they turn on men, start asserting themselves, and start making demands. Now, and because men have been, men have been, let me just finish my little cycle.
Go ahead.
In addition to seek after, because in the gynocentric phase, there's so many men that, just like the birds and other species that are gynocentric, have to appeal to women through gifts and by being courtly to them. So they're already used to serving women for sex. So once they become feminist, it's not a hard transition to get men on board, especially if you use the keyword, the buzzwords of equality and egalitarianism, which is why you have a lot of male feminists and a lot even anti-feminists and MRA spouting egalitarianism. But then eventually men start to catch on, and that's when you enter the economic collapse phase, where men are being torn down so much and the society is being so undermined that the society begins to collapse. And then as soon as collapse happens, we go right back to patriarchy.
All right. Now, if we are in a position of collapse, as you mentioned, do you believe, TFM, that there is anything that any of us can do as men, understanding these concepts, to change or disrupt the cycle that might benefit us?
No, like I said, once you give women the right to vote, your society is pretty much past the point of no return. Right. Because you can't, women will not, now they may at the 11th hour, when they see the society actively collapsing, they might go, oh, wait, guys, let's talk about this. But that's only because patriarchy is right around the corner, and now they're seeing the writing on the wall. It's too late then. Yeah. And until then, women have no reason to make any concessions because they have the power. Yeah. So they're not going to make any changes, and they're the voting majority, so we can't reform the system from within. So MGTOW is the only rational choice. It's not about changing society. This is why I put that disclaimer in my video. When I talk about patriarchy and the case for patriarchy, this isn't a MGTOW video, because MGTOW isn't about society. It's about men just improving their own lives by walking away. Because that's all you can do at this point, is just walk away.
That's what I put. That's what I put in my last introduction. It was the humongous. Remember from Road Warrior? He's like, just walk away. Walk away, and the horror will disappear.
Well, and that's the thing is, when you're at this stage, it's the subject is terminal. You can't fix it. Yeah. Feminism is not going anywhere.
Terminal illness, man.
It's just like, you know what? You just have to just pack your bags. You have to try to. The key is just survive. And first of all, don't get married. Don't have kids. You know, that's key to survival, because you don't want all these other human beings relying on you, because during the collapse, shit's going to get real. Like, you think the Baltimore riots and the Ferguson riots were bad? Wait until the government collapses and there's no more welfare and no more police.
You know what we are? We're like the alphas of The Walking Dead.
Yeah, it's going to be The Walking Dead, except for instead of zombies, it's going to be roving bands of welfare recipients.
Yes.
Looking for shit to rob and loot. Well, eventually the dust will settle. Eventually all the people will kill themselves. And then there's going to be a void, and then society is going to have to be rebuilt. And so two things will happen. Either we'll have an actual Walking Dead scenario where society is built up from scratch, or a patriarchal society will just conquer
just
the
naturally. Just fucking bring it forward. You know what we are, man? What's the name of that one character? The what was his name? The General? No, from The Walking Dead. What was his name? The General.
governor?
The governor.
The guy with the eye patch?
Yeah, we're the governor. We're
Yeah.
the fucking governor, man.
Well, it and here's the thing. Like, I mean, I am optimistic, but I don't expect to survive the reset. I fully expect to eat shit and die.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna try. I'm preparing the best I can. But there's two things. I don't think it's going because we have Islam, which is patriarchal, it is thriving.
Mm-hmm.
I think that when the West collapses, rather than go back to like the Old West, like in the Walking Dead, it's very Old West.
Yeah.
Type of thing. That's not going to happen. What you're going to see is a patriarchal society is going to come in and be like, nice country you got here. They're going to plant their flag. This is now our country, bitch.
Yeah, that's exact. It's gonna be.
Either way, it's a return to patriarchy.
Yeah.
Whether it's through an occupying army spreading their culture, or whether the culture just naturally asserts itself. So feminism is not a sustainable model. It burns itself out. You eventually run out of men to tear it down. You undermine your own society. It collapses, and then you go back to patriarchy.
Feminism is the disease that started the apocalypse. And
Well,
and the rest of
But
us.
it's not the cause, it's more the effect, because, the real cause is more gynocentrism than
Okay,
feminism.
true.
You can get rid of feminism, but you keep gynocentrism, which is still counterproductive.
But we have an inoculation. Our inoculation is walking away to the point where, hey, maybe TFM's right. Maybe we'll just we're not. It's not going to be dystopia. What's going to happen is a whole bunch of fucking Muslims are going to walk in and go, "Hey, man, what you doing?"
Hey, you're going to knock on your door and like, can we talk to you about our Lord and Savior? They're going to have machine guns with them. So,
Holy shit, man!
Well, it already happened in England, but not that way. Because,
No, not yet. Not yet. You wait, man.
collapse. Wait until the welfare state collapses and all the white Europeans eat each other.
Yeah.
You'll see the wave. You'll see like what's going on with ISIS. Like this was kind of fucked up. It makes me mad.
Yeah.
Like they're gonna kill me, and I'm gonna be like, guys, I'm like on your side. No, they're gonna kill me anyway.
Now I'll teach you how to do the shahada. I'll teach you to do the prayers, and if they come to your door, all you have to do is go Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, and they'll be like, "Oh, okay, you're
and then
okay.
you wait for the death.
You're cool, man. We're not gonna eat you."
You want to come join us? Like I thought you'd never ask.
Yeah.
No shit, man. We live in a fucked up world, dude. I'm telling you guys, we live in a fucked up world.
We're all at the end of the day, we're all just monkeys. So that's keep in mind.
Holy fuck! I don't know, man. I mean, I've always considered myself an optimist, and I try to look at the best of things, even in the worst of times. And when I talk to you guys, it gives me a real good sense of reality. Both of you have just, and you always do. Give me a real sense of understanding of the world I live in. Even though I'm on the other side of the goddamn world, we all are. And I want to thank you for talking to me tonight. And we'll bring it to a close. And I'll tell you, I'll put this up. Maybe it'll probably maybe 2 parts because it's been pretty long. But it's
more than 2 hours, yeah.
Yeah, but people need to hear it, I think, because I'm talking to some of the most intelligent people I've ever known, or that I know in my life today.
Okay,
seriously.
That line you said about assassinating people, you really need to cut that part out because that's going.
Probably yes, yeah. But,
just for the thing, go through that video and cut out.
All right, if I catch it, I'll do it. But if I miss it, I don't know, man. Because I'm gonna spend 12 hours going through. Huh?
Well, it's only what 2 hours. This isn't that long.
Yeah. I'll find it. If I think that Al Qaeda is a tattoo on my arm, yeah, we'll make it do it. Should I do the prayer again?
everything that's on the internet goes to MFA. So
Yeah, of course it does.
You just,
Of course it does.
and I don't want a watch list if I'm not already. So that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I know.
Okay,
I know who you are, man.
It was just a feminist joke, right?
Yeah. But it doesn't matter. I know who TFM is. He's a cool cat, and I know his history, and he's a cool cat, and I respect him, and I'll do my best to make sure this thing is what it is. But I love you guys, man. Let's put it to a close, though. Let me shut this shit up because eventually I'm gonna have to go through it all and make sure I'm not calling for the jihad of all Jews.
Yeah. Well,
Oh, where did that come from? I don't know.
TFM wants to kill all Jews.
Oh no, I don't.
TFM wants to kill all Jews.
we should tell Skeptor. We should notify Skeptor.
My favorite movie.
Skeptor's back. Hey, Skeptor's doing a talk tomorrow.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, man. It's all about like the Islamic Nation. We should check that out.
Oh, that's cool.
I'm
I'm gonna watch it.
I'm gonna show up. I'm gonna show up and burn a couple Jews. I think.
Okay, I'm gonna leave because this is getting out of hand. So take care.
All right, man. Thanks, TFM. Thanks, guys. Sorry, Jay. I'll see you later. Yeah. Let me shut this off.
It's right.
All right.
Yeah, it's cool.
Take care, man.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Just walk away. Just walk away, and there will be an end to the horror. Just walk away. Just walk away, and there will be an end to the horror. Just walk away. Just walk away, and there will be an end to the horror.